just gonna do it. Okay, we're live. We're doing it live. This is Brainsmasher coming at you from the heavy metal bunker of death. Today's video is not going to be a collection update. I've been in kind of a slump, buying nothing but fucking CDs all the time. That's not going to change anytime soon. But today, I want to tell you specifically about a certain genre of music that I've been just eating up left and right for several reasons. We're going to talk about the genre of death doom metal. Kind of a niche thing, and honestly, I don't prefer to bother ascribing this as a real legitimate genre. But for the purpose of today's bands that I'm going to be choosing to talk to you about, I think they fall quite well into this little tiny category. I feel like we get really caught up in letting genres define what a band sounds like, and instead of actually being courageous enough to listen to a band to find out what they really do sound like. I think it's just kind of a lazy thing that we do. But death doom is what I'm sticking with for this today. First of all, I've been listening to a lot of like lower tonality bands, obviously death metal kind of stuff. I got into some Finnish death metal stuff like your Convulse, the Ripik Kuolu album that I got the other day. Those were just blowing my mind. Just kind of revisiting those things. Been revisiting some 90s bands quite a bit, and I've just been really enjoying the tonality, the realism in the production of those bands, and so I just kind of wanted to put together a couple of bands that I think really exemplify the time of year that's coming, autumn and winter after that. I really feel like no other weather or time of year influences my personal taste musically than autumn. I just absolutely love when the air turns crisp and the sun is still out there, but all the leaves are falling off the trees and the ground, and I hike like 4 or 5 days a week when it's like that. Let's be honest, I've been hiking about that much lately anyways, because it's mushroom season. But autumn is really going to be great this year, I feel. So anyways, on to the music. Couple LPs, couple CDs. Let's just start with an LP. This one really defines the genre quite well. Now, you might say My Dying Bride, I think of them as just a straight doom band. I'd argue, first of all, that they are not a straight traditional doom band like, something that would be influenced by Pentagram or something like that, or Black Sabbath. They really were originators in taking that doom genre and making it, first of all, kind of romantic and theatrical, with their use of keyboards and violins and clean vocals for that matter. But they also, at least early on with this album, their debut and the second one, had their roots still planted quite a bit in the death metal genre. You hear a lot of the like kick triplets and stuff, a lot of chunkiness and stuff, but just their songwriting skill to break from chunky, repetitive, droney kind of parts into these just almost symphonic violin and cello parts that kind of remind me sometimes of like Typo Negative in a way. This is their debut on Peaceville. This came out in 1992. It's up on TV a couple of years. I'm so happy they did. This kind of came into some money a couple of years ago, and I just decided I need to get a couple of records that are amazing on vinyl. So that's that. Yeah, like I said, huge originators of the genre, but I think we'll see others in this pile are also kind of carrying the flag, and were at the time carrying the flag with My Dying Bride. A lot of people talk about the Peaceville 3, My Dying Bride, Paradise Lost, and Anathema. Now, My Dying Bride, I fucking love My Dying Bride. I kind of struggle with their discography a little bit, but their early stuff, of course, I love everything to death up to Like Gods in the Sun. I even love Like Gods in the Sun. But after that, I kind of lost track, and we can get into that later sometime, but early My Dying Bride stuff is some of my favorite doom metal. But Paradise Lost, I've tried to listen to Paradise Lost a lot throughout the years, and it's just, I can't really say anything bad about it, but it never holds my attention at all. When I'm listening to, I don't know, which I've heard 3 or 4 of their different albums and tried to listen to them on YouTube or something, and it just never really takes. My attention span just wanders off into the distance, and I want to listen to something else, and I don't know why. I guess I could say it kind of comes off as generic a little bit. Anathema, however, I love their Serenades album, the Crestfallen EP, of course. After that, I've kind of lost track of what they really went on to do. I could have easily featured Anathema in this, but I didn't, just because My Dying Bride is really all you need from the trilogy, Peaceville Doom bands. But yeah, Anathema, like, I never really know where to check in with them in their discography. It seems like they have a lot of stuff that's very like limp-wristed, prog, sort of post, whatever. I think Crestfallen and Serenades are really all you need. I know. Next, I've got an American band, Morgion, Among Majestic Ruin. I'm really not all that familiar with this band's discography. I've heard the other two, Solanari and Cloaked in Ages, Bound in Earth, a few times, but this is the only one I own. I think I also have it on CD. My buddy Todd sold me this LP a couple of years ago. Very grateful for it. The most significant thing I think about this band is that they sound a shitload like Solitude Eternus. This kind of like an Americanized version of what they were doing overseas, but with kind of taking that style, like the British doom death style, and adding a lot of just those sweet harmonies and just tons of soaring guitar harmonies, like Solitude Eternus did. However, their vocals are, I think, entirely growly. Another thing is they use a lot of violin, a lot of keyboards, just like a lot of American mid to late 90s bands were. And these guys also started out as a straightforward death metal band, so I believe this is their debut. You'll hear a lot of the same kind of trappings of death metal in this album, and I kind of like where that bleeding of the genres falls in albums like this. So Morgion, Among Majestic Ruin. If any of these albums are up your alley, this one is certainly no exception. This conversation can't be had without the mighty Evoken. This is their debut from 1998, a couple years after a lot of these albums were released. So in 1998, Evoken put this out on Elegy. I think they re-released it not long after. I don't have the reissue, I don't think, but Peaceville did a reissue of this a couple of years later. Definitely taken from the early 90s template of Death Doom, but their signature, I think, that they added to it was that they have these sort of hollow, just churning bass tones. It's like they just strike this clean guitar tone that just shakes you to the core. It's just like when they strike those clean guitar tones that have tons of delay on them, it just makes your spine shiver with dark coldness. There's a little bit of violin element going on here, a little bit of keyboards. I don't think there's any clean vocals in this, so it's pretty firmly rooted in the death metal genre, but just as echoey, slow, churning, sludgy, down-tuned riffs are what make Evoken so great. Their debut, Embracing Emptiness, is great, but The Quietus is also great. Antithesis of Light is fucking amazing. This has been a band that surprisingly has been consistently amazing since their inception. Evoken need to be talked about way more. Next, how about some fucking Paramecium, Exhumed of the Earth? This is an Australian doom metal project. I haven't heard any of their albums, any other albums, but this, so I don't really know how to compare them to the others, but this is a fucking juggernaut of a doom metal record. This is probably the heaviest guitar tone I've ever heard on any album, bar none. This is just a monolithic doom masterpiece that you've gotta fucking hear if you've never heard it. They were famously a Christian band. I don't know if that colors your taste whatsoever. I didn't really know what to think of this album when I first picked it up in a used bin. It doesn't look like a death metal, or a metal for that matter, album whatsoever. Really the only thing I had to go off of was this band photo. But I picked it up and oh, holy shit, I was floored. The guy, Jason Sherlock, the year after this was recorded, went on to record Horde, Helig Usfart, a famously Christian black metal record, and that was after spending a few years with Mortification. So, like, all three most notable Christian metal bands Jason Sherlock has been a part of. Other guys in this band also twilighted in Mortification as well, but I don't really think this sounds all that Christian or anything. I think it's, you could paint this artwork black, change these album titles, and tell me this was one of the most unholy doom metal records there is, and I would easily believe you without hesitation. So check out Paramecium if you haven't heard this, Exhumed of the Earth, even just for the sake of hearing the heaviest guitar tone on planet Earth. Bar fucking none. Next, let's talk about, how about some Mystic Charm with Shadows of the Unknown. This is an album that's sat in my collection dusty for many, many years. I picked it up at a pawn shop for like $3 or $4. I just thought that album cover looks cheesy and charming, but I put it on and I just thought it seemed like one of those generic, I don't know, death metal albums of the 90s. And death metal, honestly, is a genre that I don't really listen to that often. And like right now, I'm definitely having some sort of a death metal phase. So it's great that I have stuff in my collection that I'm not very familiar with, or that I've just kind of rejected or wasn't really interested in. And I can just be browsing through and go, oh, Mystic Charm. Anyways, a couple years ago, I gave my original copy of this away to my good, beloved friend Tanner, and he traded me for this reissue. It's been just kind of a running joke where I give him original rare albums for the fuck of it. And Mystic Charm is a band from, oh gosh, I'm gonna fuck this up, Denmark, Netherlands, maybe, I'm not too sure. Anyways, female-fronted doom death metal band. Way more on the death metal side of things than, say, Evoken being more of a doom band by comparison. But I think this sounds quite a bit like a really slowed down, maybe like quarter the speed that Celtic Frost plays at. There's really no bells and whistles to this, just heavy guitars, drums and vocals, of course, and really simplistic sort of atonal riffing that Celtic Frost, I think, is kind of like their signature style. But I think you could also kind of say that about Winter, but I wouldn't say that this sounds like Winter. But just to like give you an idea what this sounds like, Celtic Frost I think is a pretty good leaping off point where like the way the songs are structured and the way that the notes and riffs are played. But I like this quite a bit more than Winter. The production on this, again, brutal, super heavy, just echoing and cavernous. Check out Mystic Charms, Shadows of the Unknown. This is something I like I said, I got it a long time ago, but I'm just picking it up again and finally really understanding its magnanimity. Let's see, what else? How about some fucking Disembowelment? This is the 3 LP box set collection. We'll scratch on there. Relapse put this out a couple of years ago. I think it's limited to something like 750 copies or something like that. It's kind of cool to have a triple LP collection, but the other day I just realized, honestly, that the demo material are the same songs that were on Transcendence of the Into the Peripheral. And it's kind of pointless. Like, you can't really get any better than Transcendence. I think this is such a beloved band because they never really did anything less than great. Comes with a poster. And I really appreciate a band like that that never did anything bad. They were only active from 90 to 93. They did one record, and before they went terrible, I don't know if it was inevitable or what, but they just broke up. They never did anything bad. So you remember just like Disembowelment as a perfect band, and I just kind of like that the way it is. I wish more bands would leave on a high note and never come back. At the Gates talking to you. Check out this cool patch. This patch is like on black Kleenex, so I can never wear it on anything, but it's a great old logo. Disembowelment, though, they added a little bit of progressive elements to the Doom style, and definitely borrowed from some death metal bands in that style. But they did some kind of avant-garde experimentation with clean guitars, like that. In that first track of Transcendence in the Peripheral, everybody just, you know, that blasting part that comes in about 3 minutes into the song where it just rings out with that blasting, and there's those clean guitars. Bam, 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 bam. The way they contrast that with those slow, churning, more doomy guitars, it's just such a killer album. Disembowelment, if you don't know Disembowelment, sorry, buddy. Kind of started to formulate this idea for the video. This is Ceremonium. Ceremonium is way more on the death metal side of things, and I wish I could think of or find or know about or remember more bands that fall into this category. Totally an American death metal band from, you know, the mid 90s. This is a collection, a 2 CD collection of their full length and an EP and a couple of demos and live stuff, compilation track. You know the story. Artwork sucks. I hate these reissues. They just revise the whole history of the band, it seems. Anyways, this is some killer American death metal, but they had some more emotional topics that were not like they weren't your Cannibal Corpses, they weren't your Death and anything like that. Although I guess you could say Death had some topics about life and shit like that. Death was life metal, as they said in Norway. I got this from a distro in Mexico called Chaos Records, mainly because this was the only thing mostly that was missing in his discography. And this album, original copy of this album, goes for about $50 pretty consistently, and I just got fed up finally. And I said, you know what, I'm just going to get their discography, double CD, for $13 from Chaos Records in Mexico. Only distro I could find selling this, and it didn't, as far as I know, remember to pop up on eBay. Dreams We Have Written, out on Weird Truth in 2012. But Ceremonium has just excellent mid-90s death metal production, but again, they're kind of slowing it down, drawing out some of those more doomy parts in their songwriting, and I guess you're not going to hear any violins or keyboards or anything like that. The 7-inch tracks off of the, what is it called, the No Longer Silent EP on this, I believe it's called, fucking fantastic. One of my favorite bands. Most people don't know about them or talk about them, and you never hear about them because they were weird from the get-go, and they got weirder and weirder and weirder as they progressed throughout their discography, and eventually broke up in like 2003 or 4 or something like that. Talking about Beyond Dawn, and I don't think any of my viewers ever talk about, or other YouTubers ever talk about Beyond Dawn. I feel like I'm the odd man out. So this is their debut EP called Longing for Scarlet Days. Came out on Edibo here in 1993. This is the most 90s packaging you're going to see. 94, sorry. So this band has always been pretty unique. This debut sounds quite a bit like pretty traditional doom, but I don't know if it's incidental, like a coincidence, that they sound like Swans, or if they actually were listening to Swans at the time. I'm not really the biggest fan of Swans, so I don't know if I'm right in saying that these guys sound like Swans, but I swear the clean vocals, just the lush, rich atmosphere of their clean vocals mixed with the sort of slow churning guitars, and then the horns, which is, I don't think Swans has any horns, but the horns just add such a weird, dreary sort of atmosphere to this band's stuff. Really like the material on Longing for Scarlet Days, but then their full-length debut on Candlelight, Pity Love is the title of this. Takes that even further. It's a little bit more avant-garde, a lot more horns going on. I'm not sure if it's trumpets or saxes or what. I'm not a jazz aficionado by any means, but these guys were from Norway. After this one, after Pity Love, they did an album called Reverie, which incorporates a whole lot more really strange avant-garde instrumentation. But as far as I'm concerned, this is one of the doomiest, strangest bands to ever come out of Norway, or really Europe for that matter. Check out Beyond Dawn and do yourself a favor. I feel like these guys are really criminally underrated. Either one of these, take your pick. Both fucking killer releases.
Now,
back to the American Shores with Dusk. This is a reissue again of their Majestic Thou in Ruin album, which goes for a pretty fucking penny. These guys were from Wisconsin. This is Majestic Thou in Ruin and their Dusk EP. From Wisconsin, and man, like I said, Paramecium has some of the best guitar tone I've ever heard, but this album has some of the best drum recording I've ever heard. That snare tone, it's so good. This really, like, when I picked this up, when did I pick this up? I've had this on MP3 for years, always wanted to get a CD copy, just decided to pony up and give up on ever finding an original. Got the discography, I don't know, last summer or something like that. This is where I really started to notice that I have such a real huge taste for that just analog, realistic live sound. It really seems like you're seeing Dusk on stage in front of you when you hear this. But this band, unlike a lot of the other bands, incorporates no extraneous instrumentation. You're just going to hear chuggy guitars, guttural vocals, and by the way, these guitars are tuned down to drop Z. I swear to God, I don't know how they got their guitars tuned so fucking low. I rejoice because they are recently active again, playing shows. Apparently they just opened up for Amorphous in Milwaukee a couple of months ago. So, interesting band for their time in the Midwest. You had your Deteriorates and your Morgues and stuff like that going on, while these guys were heavily just chugging along on the Doom. This is just such a killer fucking release. This really defines Doom Death more than most of these releases, as far as I'm concerned. How about Unholy's Second Ring of Power? Not available on LP, sadly, but holy shit, this album is so fucking devastatingly heavy. This is their second album. The first album, a little bit more firmly planted in the death metal genre. This finds them slowing it down, playing a lot more with the chugging, churning, slow, agonizing speed of this album cover. Is just so terrible. This artwork is so weird, and I just kind of love it in that way. These guys did a couple of other albums, just getting a little bit more strange. For Avant-Garde, finally, I think, calling it a day in 1999. But this one, as far as I'm concerned, is really where it's at. This one is the doomier of all of those albums, and it's just one of the heaviest things I've ever fucking heard. Hopefully, if it works out, when I get done filming this video, I'm going to be doing the thing where I play clips of each one of these albums while I talk. So I hope this works out. I hope you like it. That way I'm able to force you to listen to each one of these albums. But of course, I'm still going to leave links below for you to check out. So I talked about this when I got it in on my collection update a couple of weeks ago. This is Thorns of the Carryon, and this collection is called A Tragedy in Remembrance. This is a 3 CD set put out by Endless Desperation Productions out of Russia. killer box set, just kind of hard to track down. Band photo here. So these guys were from Ohio, and their only full-length Scarlet Tapestry came out in, I'm going to guess here again, 93, somewhere around there. So this is all the recorded material, a little bit of live stuff, EPs, demos, rehearsals, you know, the whole 9 yards. But Endless Desperation did a fantastic job on this, except for the booklet is too small to stay inside of the jewel case. Tiny little gripe there, but whatever. I've wanted to have a copy of the Scarlet Tapestry for a really, really, really long time. And again, like most of these fucking albums, it goes for between like $60 and $100 or so, and I wasn't going to pay that. But killer American US Death Doom. I would compare this to maybe like a slower, early Cradle of Filth. Lots of romantic keyboards, violins, cellos, female vocals all over the place. If that's your kind of thing, this is going to be up your alley. Might have a hard time finding a copy of it like I did, but, you know, there's other options out there. So enjoy Thorns of the Carryon. That is all I have for you for this Doom Death Compendium. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe or just whatever. Just watch as often as you possibly can. Thanks for joining me. Hope you have a great week. Later.